Welcome, everybody. I'm Ann Hogan. I'm Dean of the College of Communication and Fine Arts here at the University of Memphis. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the first of what we anticipate to be a series of interviews that we've entitled Professional Reinvention. Now, the idea for such a series came out of some discussions I was having with our wonderful graduate students here at the college, which we call CCFA. And we were talking about the extremely rapid rate of transformation of the world that we're living in. And the students were contemplating, the job sector that they're going to be soon entering. Some of them are already in having jobs, and the need really to be very nimble and to seize opportunities and challenges professionally that perhaps we can't even anticipate at this moment in time. So we thought it'd be really inspiring to have a series of interviews with some very successful professionals who have done just that, who have been trained in areas of programs of study that we offer at the college and gone on to have careers in which they have welcomed ways to stretch and grow and evolve their skill sets. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with the College of Communication and Fine Arts, it's a wonderful college with a really intriguing array of academic disciplines. We offer programs of study in art, in architecture, in theater and dance. We have the Rudy E. Scheidt School of Music. We have programs in communication and film, as well as journalism and strategic media. So a lot of really wonderful opportunities for all kinds of learning and skills to be developed. Now, when I was thinking about interviews on professional redevelopment, the first person who came to mind was Todd Richardson. Now, many of you may know Todd Richardson as the president of the Crosstown Redevelopment Cooperative Association. Todd is also the co-director of Crosstown Arts. I first met Todd when I took on my role here in Memphis as dean in April 2017. And at that time, Todd was an associate professor in the college in the Department of Art. He specializes in European Renaissance history, and he was absolutely an outstanding professor, well respected by students and colleagues alike. By that time, however, Todd was already heavily involved in his work over at Crosstown Concourse. And that really started in 2010 when Todd led the efforts to do a major refurbishment of what used to be the Sears Crosstown building. And it is huge. It's actually 1.5 million square feet. And at that time, the building had become pretty much derelict, and Todd worked tirelessly to transform it into what is now known as the Urban Vertical Village. And its mission is really social justice and really having access for the community to the arts, to education, and to healthcare. If you haven't been to Crosstown Concourse yet, I really, really heartily recommend that you visit and enjoy all that it has to offer. It is an amazing, amazing place and contributes so much to the city of Memphis, and really is nationally and internationally recognized as an exemplar of urban development. So I'm very grateful that Todd Richardson has taken the time to speak with me about his career and his particular path of professional reinvention. It's quite a fascinating story. I hope you enjoy the interview with Todd Richardson, and I look forward to further interviews soon. We're looking to continue the series in the fall semester. So thanks for joining us, and enjoy meeting Todd Richardson. Well, Todd, welcome. Big CCFA hello to you, and we're really grateful for you for taking the time to speak with us. When I was thinking about the series that the students had suggested about professional reinvention, guess who was the first person who came to mind?
Yes, the resident chameleon.
Chameleon, really successful, creative chameleon, and we're so grateful to have the opportunity to learn a bit more about your journey. So I wanted to start with, could you tell us a bit about your training? Because you became an art historian and a much loved professor in our art history program. So tell us a bit about your training.
Well, it's interesting. My training kind of reflects where I've ended up in life, and that it was a little bit all over the place. I went to university at the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss, and I was a double major in philosophy and psychology. And I remember my dad asking me, "So, what do you want to be? Doubly unemployed?" And then I minored in studio art, so I painted for a long time, and then moved to Memphis in 1995, and I was actually the youth director at Idlewild Presbyterian Church. Kept painting, and just really had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and kind of explored a lot of different things while I was in Memphis. Started out at the U of M in the psychology department, thinking I wanted to do graduate work in psychology, and after a year of that, decided no. Let's see, what else did I do? I ended up doing a master's in theological seminary. And it was actually during that time when I was writing my thesis, I wrote it on Rembrandt and the Reformation. And up until that point, let's see, I was about 26 at that time. I had never had one single art history class.
Oh, yeah.
At 26, never had one single art history class. And so I decided, well, if I'm going to do this thesis right, I should at least have one art history class. So I took a class from Carol Purtle, my professor at the U of M, in Baroque art history. And so it turns out that if you really love philosophy and religion and art, and you mix all those things together, you get Renaissance art history. So it was that class that I mean, it's halfway through the semester, I was like, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. Because I love the teaching aspect of youth ministry. I just hadn't found what it was I wanted to spend the rest of my life studying and writing about. And so it was that class. And I found a professor who was a specialist in what I wanted to do, which was early modern visual culture. So Europe, Reformation era, kind of the visual language of that period. Particularly since 95% of the population couldn't read, they got most of their information from images. And so that just fascinated me. And so he could have been at Iowa State, and I would have gone to Iowa State. It was all about just going to study with him. But he thankfully was in Berkeley, California. And so I wrote to him and said, I've only had one art history class, but here's my background. And here's what I want to study. And so for him, I think it was a little unique having someone who was older, or at least, not straight out of undergrad, and knew what they wanted to do. And so he said, well, come to Berkeley and interview, and, let's see. So I went, and it all went well. And so in 2000, my wife and I, Lee, moved to Berkeley, and he was actually at the Graduate Theological Union, which had a joint program, a PhD program in art and religion. And so I would take all of my art history classes at UC Berkeley, and then I would take my church history and medieval theology and all those kinds of things at the GTU, Graduate Theological Union. So I did that for 3 years, finished all of my coursework and qualifying exams, started my dissertation, and he's actually a Dutch guy. He's from the Netherlands. And so he left Berkeley to take up a position to chair the art history department at Leiden University, which is the oldest university in the Netherlands, started back in 1575. And so he asked me if I would go with him. And so I withdrew from Berkeley and went to Leiden, and that was in 2003. And ended up spending 5 years in the Netherlands. My oldest daughter now, she's 16, she was born there. And so it took me 4 years to finish the PhD, and then I taught for a year. And then, long story long, I'm assuming this is okay. And so I went on the job market in 2007, and there were 12 jobs in the country in my field, Renaissance art history, which was a great year. And so applied for all of them. And turns out Purtle, the woman from whom I took my first art history class back in 1999, retired the same year that I went on the job market. And so her retirement opened up the position at the University of Memphis. And so I interviewed at Memphis, Chicago, and LA, and Memphis was genuinely the best position. And fortunately, the committee found it a good idea to offer me a position. And that was actually Richard Liu's first year as chair.
Oh, he was the chair of our Department of Art. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we hit it off, from the first conversation. And so to our surprise, we in 2008 moved back to Memphis for me to take this position as an assistant professor in Renaissance and Baroque art history. And so that's kind of how we ended up back in Memphis. Never thought we would be back in Memphis, but here we are.
Here you are. Well, that's fascinating. I knew you had been in the Netherlands, and I, of course, met you. I started my position in 2017. So you were well established and very much loved by your colleagues and by your students. You're a really talented teacher. But I think that that's really, really important and inspiring for our students, because, a lot of students come in a freshman, they have no idea what they want to study. And then students pick a major and, some of them go on to our graduate programs, but not, maybe not sure exactly what their path is going to be. And I think that, the breadth of your training is it's so powerful, because it ended up, being so advantageous to you, and it's funny too, because I was either 26 or 27, I can't remember, but I had a career as a professional dancer. So I started my undergraduate studies as well. And it was actually Renaissance, but English Renaissance, a little bit later than your period. And so it is interesting, I think, we have students on their journeys with us at any point in their life. And that's really amazing. So let's talk about your time a bit at the University of Memphis and in the Department of Art. As I say, I had the pleasure of meeting you from 2017, which was also turned out to be a pretty important year for Crosstown Concourse.
Right. Yeah.
So tell us a bit about your time at the University of Memphis and with CCFA, and about the students.
I was there for 11 years, came in 2008, and then 2019 was the year that I kind of committed to being at Crosstown full time. And I loved every bit of it, really. I love teaching. I love the diversity of the students, the faculty in the art department. Having Richard Liu as my boss was great. And then all of the art historians, the art history faculty at the University of Memphis is really remarkable compared to other peer institutions, across the country, to have a specialist, kind of in every area, and to have colleagues, there's 10 folks with Egyptology, and then across art history. And so to be able to be surrounded by, so many colleagues who specialize in so many different things, as opposed to just 2 or 3 who have to teach everything. So that was great. I taught Italian Renaissance, Northern Renaissance, Baroque, and then also World Art II, Renaissance to Modern. And so I rotated those courses. And so that was perfect for me. And then, as time went on, being able to have grad students too. So we had a master's program. And so to have, work on thesis, and to be able to kind of step it up a little bit in terms of research and writing, that was great. Published my first book in 2011, and was able to, take a leave to be able to do that. And so kind of everything that a professor is in terms of administration and teaching and research and writing, all of those things were really well supported at the University of Memphis. And, I have colleagues, at a lot of different universities, and we compare notes, so I felt pretty fortunate.
Yeah, well, that's really great to hear. And I remember, in 2017, and when I met you and you were teaching and just, excelled in all of those aspects of the role and your rapport with students. But knew we were going to miss you, although I knew that CCFA and Crosstown would continue to have a strong connection as we do. But
little do we know we'd start a radio station together.
That's right. That's right. Todd and I are both on the board of WYXR. We had a meeting together yesterday about that. That's very exciting. So you see how things evolve that that we couldn't imagine at the time. But I at that time, you were also, you were wearing many hats, and the hat at Crosstown was getting very, very big. And so, it seemed pretty inevitable that you were going to need to step into that role full time. But I am thrilled that you're still connected to CCFA, and that
Absolutely.
we have so many, the radio station, but other kind of projects and internships at Crosstown. But so tell us, okay, you've had this incredibly diverse journey in terms of your training, and you're in Memphis, and then what happens? How did you find, I've called it that Todd Richardson found his inner entrepreneur.
That's probably not too far from the truth. So gosh, I'd been here for about a year. It was 2009, and a couple of things happened kind of simultaneously. A good friend at the time, still a good friend, Christopher Miner, who I co-founded Crosstown Arts with, had an idea. He has his own journey. He's a video artist, but he did his undergrad at UT Knoxville, and then actually taught in Memphis for a little while, and then did an MFA at Yale in photography, and then lived in New York and kind of had his art life there, and represented by a gallery, et cetera. And then ended up moving back to Jackson, Mississippi to run the family business when his dad got sick. And so he had an idea about an artist residency program in Clarksdale, Mississippi, where, I don't know if you ever heard of the Shack Up in Clarksdale, but he had an idea for doing that there. And so he came to me, and we were talking about it. And so simultaneously to that, I actually knew the owner of the Sears Crosstown building from my previous life as youth director at Idlewild.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
And so we were just talking one day, and I said something like, "Dude, what the hell are you going to do with the Sears building?" Because he bought it in 2007 for the pure purpose of donating it. He just wanted it. He loved the building, and didn't want to see it demolished. And he was going to actually donate it to a local college, and it was going to become their urban campus. Well, that didn't happen in 2007. And then 2008, the recession happened. And so he's like, well, I'll just mothball it, and we'll see, on the other side of this thing.
The building must have been in pretty rough shape at that time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it was completely, abandoned, and in complete disrepair. So anyway, long story short, he and I started a conversation, and in California and in Europe, I had come across, just through the arts, these projects where large industrial, no longer used properties had been kind of reimagined through the arts, or at least the arts was the spark that started the conversation, where big unused space turned into studios, and then studios turned into some programming and concerts, and then some programming and concerts turned into some coffee shops, and then the programming and events and coffee shops turned into apartments. Just kind of the evolution of how the creative class can draw attention and investment. And so I just started showing the owner projects in Europe were this way. Probably the best one in the US is MassMoCA, Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art. It's an old late 19th century spark plug plant, like 700,000 square feet, that is now this amazing mecca in North Adams, Massachusetts, which is in the middle of nowhere, for contemporary art.
Massachusetts, I know.
Oh, you are. Oh,
yeah.
Well, there you go. And then North Adams, and an old mill town that this project has completely transformed. So he was very interested, and he had his own vision, in terms of of using this building to continue to support arts and culture, and music is his thing. But anyway, now long story long, he was like, well, let's do a feasibility study. Let's put together a group of people. Thanks, Todd. You're an art history professor. I trust you, but I don't trust you that much. Let's get some people who know what they're talking about. So we put together a group, a developer, an engineer, somebody from in marketing, another person in architecture, in design, et cetera. And the five of us spent a year doing a feasibility study. Can anything happen with the building from just a structural and environmental? Is there too much asbestos? Is there too much lead paint? Just the basics. And then, if so, what could an idea be to fill 25 football fields of space?
Yeah,
right. And so, really, to answer your question, my entree into the project was through the arts and the use of arts for community and real estate development. I say use, but the arts being the kind of creative spark that helps people think outside of the box with projects that a traditional developer would have a hard time with.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think that's what's so fascinating and so really inspiring about Crosstown Arts and Crosstown Concourse, because it's, often it's the developer and it comes, and then maybe the arts come as the
decorator.
Right, or something
Yeah.
like that. But that's why I think it's so amazing. It is driven by the arts. The arts was the catalyst of it. And
absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's just changed the city, changed the neighborhood. As I mentioned in my introduction, it's nationally, internationally renowned as the urban vertical urban village. For those of our students or friends who are watching who may not have been to Crosstown Concourse yet, and if that's the case, I strongly encourage everybody to get there because it is amazing. Tell us about, I mean, there's just so much there. So how would you describe it, or what are the different components that the building houses?
Yeah, it's so early on, we didn't have the words vertical urban village. So all we could say was beyond mixed use, beyond simply putting retail and office space and residential space together to coexist. It was about creating a really integrated vertical community. And so, on the surface of it, you can come and on the ground floor is kind of all of the retail that a little village needs. There's a coffee shop, an ice cream place, pizza, hamburgers, a little grocery store, Global Cafe, which is this amazing international food hall, juice bar. There's a bank branch. There's a FedEx. There's a hair salon. There's a nail salon. There's a pharmacy. Just kind of all the little things you need, which have been awesome during a pandemic to have, at your fingertips. And then that's the first floor. And then floors 2 through 6, there are about 45 tenants. Some of the main ones are Crosstown Arts. You mentioned there's about 45,000 square feet of gallery space, music performance space, an artist residency program, what we call shared art, which is you can pay a monthly membership fee to have access to a wood and metal workshop, digital media lab, et cetera. And then, of course, the all-important bar, where all the good conversation happens.
Memphis, yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then Church Health, if we have an anchor tenant, it's Church Health. They have 150,000 square feet where they have everything from primary care to dental care, behavioral health, eye care. If you are working uninsured in Memphis, then you don't have health insurance, you can go there to get care. They serve about 70,000 patients a year in that space. And then St. Jude and Alzac St. Jude have space. Methodist Healthcare. There's Crosstown High School, so there's a full public charter high school, 9th through 12th grade, about 450 students that always bring such great life to the village for better and for worse, I will say, et cetera. And there's some traditional office space. And so we say it's a vertical urban village anchored in arts, education, and healthcare, because those arts, education, and healthcare are the primary kind of fields, if you will, of what our major tenants are in.
Right.
And then floors 7 through 10 are 265 apartments. So over 500 people live at Concourse, including my family. So we live on the 10th floor. My office is on the 2nd floor, and Ava, my 16-year-old daughter, goes to high school on the 4th floor.
Wow,
So we're all in.
Incredible.
Yeah. So it's every day. There's about pre and post COVID, there is about 3,000 people coming and going every day. But really, for folks who don't live here or work here or go to school here, what's really fun are the events and programming. We use a lot of the revenue of the building to just continue to pump in investment to our creative community, and so 4 or 5 times a week there's live pop-up music happening. Post COVID, there's live music in the green room, which is Crosstown Arts music performance space. And then about once a month, we have big, events in the plaza and outside, little festivals and things like that. So it's about the tenants, but the events and programming are what continue to bring people back and experience, Concourse on a regular basis.
Right. I'm really excited about, with the new radio station, that be able to broadcast live from the green room, and Shike Family Music Center is going up quickly, and we'll be able to live stream as well, which is, that's amazing. And the other thing too, for future projects, as you know, Todd, we've just the Arts and Health Initiative here that's housed in CCFA, but it's we've attained institute status, and I think there's a lot of projects that will occur between all the work there. But I want to talk a bit about the commitment of Crosstown Concourse to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I also want to hear about your experiences during the ravages of COVID and the impact of it. But I just want to say too, and I know that you and your family live there. There's just everything there. Do you ever feel like, do you get out?
It is funny that because 60% of the building facade is glass. They're massive windows. And so and then the atria that we had, central atrium, east atrium, and west atrium, there's natural light everywhere. And so it's a little, it fools you, because you kind of feel like you're outside and you're getting sun, but you're not going outside. And so, yes, there have been times where, honestly, 2 or 3 days go by and I'm like, I got to get outside. I got to get outside. My vitamin D level is low.
Yeah. But it really is. Everything you need is there. It's incredible. Really, I know how important diversity, equity, and inclusion are to the mission of Crosstown Concourse and Crosstown Arts, as they are to the College of Communication and Fine Arts and the university. Tell us a bit about some of the multitude of ways that that Crosstown works to try to make the world a more equitable place.
Yeah. So I think the best way to answer that question is to be as practical as possible in terms of very specific examples, and it really starts from the beginning in terms of kind of unabashedly, unwaveringly making DEI core to the mission, which then allows you to set goals, specific goals, which then force decisions that create an atmosphere, an environment, a culture where DEI becomes more of a habit of mind, right? Just of just a practice. And what I mean by that is for example, even the design, right? Who our tenants are, and saying, okay, when you come to Crosstown, we don't want you to have to take out your wallet. We want you to be able to experience the place, no matter who you are or what you have. And so Church Health is a perfect example. 98% of their patients are low income and represent all sorts of different countries across the globe, because of the international community here. And so, Methodist Healthcare and others, because they have some of the most diverse employee base, those folks are then here. There's a public high school, right, that is free. A lot of Crosstown Arts programming, whether it's the galleries or the music pop-ups, are free and open to the public. So then it's about making sure that the content of those things, the musicians or the artists, what's hanging on the wall, that kind of thing, is a good representation of the community as a whole. And so there's a curation that happens with the tenants to make sure that both the content and the people associated with those tenants, the uses and who they are diverse and inclusive, which then drives design of the building, right? And so, when you come to Concourse, the whole point, which is honestly a pain in the neck from an operations standpoint, but there's 32 different entrances on the ground floor.
Yeah.
And the whole point, right, was that it's porous. In a lot of buildings like this, you walk in and you got to walk by the security desk and tell them where you're going. Yeah, that's not the case at Crosstown. It's very porous. You walk in so many different ways and nobody's looking at you, and it has challenges, right? But because that was core to our mission early on, we say, okay, well, we have to spend more money on operations in order to make this work. But if it's core to our mission, then that's what we have to do, right? And so it's your tenants, it's their uses, it's their people, and it's the how people just simply enter the building. And then you put all of that together, and now, it's not perfect. We still have work to do. But when you come to Concourse, it is a diverse crowd of people where you feel like it is representative of the city as a whole. And when you do that, then everything else becomes just easier, in terms of just thinking towards that. So I'll give you one thing I thought about earlier. I'll read you just so every security guard, custodial staff, everybody in operations carries a card with them. And the card says, the vision of Crosstown Concourse is to change how people experience their lives, their neighborhood, and their city, and to purposefully create unexpected opportunities to learn, grow, and experience a deep sense of community. As a result, all staff and employees at Concourse should strive to serve the community, to embrace all things Memphis, and to share and assist in whatever way necessary. Crosstown is open to all, and its mission is emblazoned upon the parking garage with giant orange letters that spell yours. This is not only a message for the public, but a reminder to those of us privileged to work here. No one should ever leave Crosstown feeling less than. And that is the mantra, and so I have that laminated card where every person, as a part of running this place, they have that in their pocket as they are making their rounds, or, the security guards are making their patrols. And it's about making, making it core to your mission. And then all the decision comes from that. Then last, I will say, too, again, I'm giving you examples where it's been successful. There's plenty of examples where it's been a flop, but in terms of construction, the initial goal was 20% of construction expenses going to minority and women-owned business enterprises. And our contractor said it wasn't possible on a project like this because of the scale of it. And we were like, you're smart people, figure it out. And so they did, right? Because it was an unwavering commitment to that. And then we ended up at 32%, which is one of the highest percentages, in large scale projects like this in the city. And then we created over 450 jobs, and the goal was 50% of those jobs have to go to people who either qualify as low income or are from a low income community. And so we achieved that goal. So again, diversity being not just race, not just gender, not just religion, but generational, professional, economic, and trying to think about all of those things and setting goals for ourselves. But it really starts at the beginning, where it's about, the tenants, the design, the construction, and then that just leads itself into where we are today.
Yeah, and I think that's so beautiful, and so really is such a paradigm of inclusivity.
Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah,
I think it's, and I know it has been, really inspired building design and approaches to, community engagement all over. It really is. But I think what's really amazing, well, so many things that are amazing, but that the people at Crosstown, we talk about the security guards, they literally embody the mission. I mean, I think that's, and also the way that, the design of the building was so intentional to be inclusive. And that's incredible. I think, it is, when you mentioned about, anybody can just come in, I find that too, and students and colleagues and friends who go there, sometimes you can just walk around, pick an entryway, and you have a different experience. And sometimes it's fun to go to Crosstown and not even know that you want, to go to the pharmacy or whatever, and just kind of see what happens. And I think it's, what is so striking to me is how intentional that was in terms of the design and in terms of what you do and the community there. That's really, really helpful. So you mentioned a few things about the challenges of COVID. I mean, I think one of the really hopeful moments that was just so beautiful was the Christmas lights at Crosstown Concourse. But
that was awesome.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
so beautiful. But tell us a bit about, I mean, boy, it must have been so challenging. And, Crosstown is relatively new. It's up and going, and wow, making this big impact. So it's been really pretty awful for everyone in different ways. So how was the experience at Crosstown? And also, the arts have shown such resilience, and we've all learned so much, and a lot of what we had to respond to because of the pandemic I know in CCFA, they're keepers. We're gonna, we learn from them. So so tell us about.
Yeah, lots of pivoting for sure. On the one hand, that because of the diversity of our tenants and the diversity of uses, just from a pure economic standpoint, we're okay. Because, for example, residential, if you got to be safer at home, Crosstown is actually a nice place to be. So the apartments have stayed, leased, and people here have appreciated being here. And so that was a huge relief that they were able to sustain that. Which I should also say, 53 or 20% of the apartments are affordable units, which puts a cap on what we can charge, and then people living there have to make 80% or less of the area median income. The office space, it's healthcare, right? Education, where they are getting their funding from the state, no matter what. And lots of nonprofits who have, as you said, been resilient. Retail obviously has been hard. I mean, it's just restaurants and others have been hit enormously hard, and no different here. So we've just been working with our tenants as they have need, and just making sure that some have been great. The FedExes and the hair salon and the nail salon and the coffee shop, of course they've experienced really, really tough times, but they've been able to get through. Others, it's just been devastating. And so as people have need, we've just been working with them on their leases and things like that. So just from a purely operational standpoint, it's been okay. But the biggest bummer is, part of the whole point of Crosstown is to bring a lot of people together around art and music. And the loss of that community has just been the biggest bummer, so quiet. but things are picking up, and we've started back live music pop-ups in different areas, and started to advertise those for the first time. We had those over the Christmas holidays, but we didn't really advertise them. They just kind of happened, and if you were here, you got lucky. Now we're actually advertising them. So 4 or 5 times a week, there's essentially live concerts happening at Crosstown. The other big great thing is it's so big. There's so much open space, whether you're inside or outside. So you really can, as our marketing says, you have room to breathe, which for COVID is a big deal, having room to breathe. So that's nice. And so, we found ourselves pivoting, like, our one specific example, we had a budget for ballet before, and like, well, during COVID, nobody's doing ballet. So how can we use that budget to help our retail? And so we created a concourse delivery team. And so if you live within 4-mile radius of Crosstown, you can order delivery from any of the restaurants, and it's free to you and free to the restaurants.
Oh, wow.
And so we took, one bit of budget that wasn't being used and used it for something else to help support both people who want food at home, but also the restaurants. I mean, we started that last April, and we've made over 3,000 deliveries of food since then. So that's just an example of kind of pivots that we've made. Crosstown Arts has really used the time to dial in their more administrative things, policies and procedures and workflow. They've also gone through their own process with DEI training and kind of restructuring how decisions are made to make sure it's more inclusive. They started Against the Grain, which is a online kind of performance where musicians could submit original videos with their music, and then the Against the Grain site, you can go and watch new music that's performed, and you can pay a $5 ticket, 100% of which goes to the musicians. So lots of different things, but overall, okay from an economic standpoint, bummer from the arts and community standpoint. So we're looking forward to that. Events will be coming back in July. All of the outdoor events will be coming back in July. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, no, that's but I think in thinking back to the Christmas lights, it was a way that people could safely go by and have this wonderful, peaceful, hopeful, beautiful spectacle. And I think that that was probably another reallocation of budget.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But it was just the kind of Christmas, again, beautiful spectacle that the city needed at that moment, which has been so difficult. Todd, this is wow. I mean, there's just so much to unpack, and
it is,
what a journey you've had, and still going. What would you want to say to our students here at CCFA and the University of Memphis, and any students about, your career might not unfold as you planned, or even if you didn't plan, maybe in ways that you can't even imagine. So how do students, and both at undergraduate and graduate and recent graduates, how do they embrace that? What's the positive aspects of that? And also, I guess, what are some of the challenges too?
Yeah, the biggest message I always have for my students and young people in general, is especially young people in liberal arts and particularly in the arts, is just how transferable your skills are. And I don't think that's emphasized enough. And so when you're, let's just say, whether it's music or dance or writing or visual arts, when you are navigating the creative process in making a work, whether that is through choreography or through a paintbrush or through a computer to write, et cetera, you are making decisions all the time. Like, you are an executive saying, this is more important than, well, you first start out with a concept, right? And usually if you end up in making something exactly where you thought you were going up when you started, that thing you made is probably not very good. Right? And so you start out with a concept, or to use another word, a mission, right? And that is the filter through which you make your decisions. And so you may prioritize certain steps in a dance, or certain lines in a painting, or certain words in a poem over others. But the whole point is you're trying to create a composition that is true to the concept, but also you've been authentic to the creative process, that as you work, other options come available that you didn't know of when you started. And I call it being hospitable to those moments, like opening myself up and being okay, right, with not being right all the time, and being willing to pivot and go in a direction where the energy has, the creative energy has taken me, and not being so holding so tightly to that one thing that I thought, that I was going to do. But still, I have that filter, that mission, that vision, that concept that is a guide, but it's not chains, to that. And so whether you're, when you're designing a building, right, we had a mission and a vision, but we pivoted all over the place, in changing. Same with who our tenants were, and with your career and your profession. Opportunities are going to come and go. You have your, your concept, your filter through which you're making decisions, but it's about being hospitable to those moments where you're like, okay, this is not where I thought I was going to go, but here's how it fits my authentic self, and how I can continue to express that through a different medium. And that's okay.
Yeah, I love the notion of being hospitable to the moment. I think that alone is just a really powerful, just a mantra, or
Yeah.
some kind of a guide. And I think that it's interesting because in the College of Communication and Fine Arts, and like you said, whether it's a piece of choreography or a play, or it's a journalist, or working in digital media, working on a story, or, in all of the arts and communication subject areas of, having that concept, and then kind of going with those moments, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
And, but it sounds like, your journey, being hospitable to the moment, also means being courageous a bit, or open at least, and because it can be risky, right? It can be risky,
Absolutely.
and it might fail.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're stepping over a crevice or a crack, whether it's 8 inches or 80 feet, if you can't see the other side, then it doesn't matter. They feel the same. And so, sometimes you gotta reach for the next rope before, you got to let go of your rope you're on before you can reach the next one. And part of the creative process is what happens in between. So I agree. It is, but at the same time, it when it happens. It's about safety and security, and knowing are okay, but it's also about knowing when to let go of those things to achieve something greater.
And I think too, when you're saying about, like, going to the next rope, that sometimes you don't even know that rope is there, or
that's
what
right.
material it's made of. And I think that's, but kind of just, even if it doesn't work out, I guess knowing that the journey is going to be meaningful in some way. It certainly sounds like it has been for you.
Yeah, and you have to give yourself grace. I remember I was 25. I mean, I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life. And all of my other friends had careers, and they were married, and I was going through this very stressful time. And I went home and was talking to my dad, just kind of communicating the stress that I was feeling. And he was like, Todd, I got 3 things to tell you. I'm from North Mississippi, so he's a pastor, a minister, so 3-point sermon. I got 3 things to tell you. Number 1, if you figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life by the time you're 35, consider it ideal, because you still got 40 years, to do it. Number two, if you find a job where you enjoy 60% of what you do, consider it ideal, because everybody's got to take out the trash. And number three, if you do what you truly feel called to do, most people will think you're crazy. I'm like, check.
I love that. We have to like frame that and put it on all over the CCFA building. That's amazing. Well, Teddy, the pandemic cat, has made his appearance, which is probably Todd, I'm sure, has a few things on his plate to get to. So Todd, I think we might have to bring you back if you're willing to at some point and see.
Oh, happy to. Always. Yeah, absolutely.
I would love to continue the conversation, and thank you so much. And I
thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, I think that, you're sharing your experiences and out of your colleagues and team at Crosstown. I think it was Teddy loved it. And I think it's this, I am sure, is so meaningful and inspiring to our students. And I love that you've shared with us that it doesn't always work out, but you get somewhere in the end. That's amazing.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Well,
totally
thank you so much. And
you're welcome.
Well, looking forward to hearing more as the journey progresses.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking forward to ramping back up over here. So we'll see you soon. And if you haven't been to Crosstown, come see us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll see you soon, Todd. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye.